Before you begin, pause for a moment. Notice where your attention is right now. Not what you are thinking about, but how focused you feel. How aware you are of this moment. That awareness you are noticing is already beginning to shift. Throughout human history, people have learned that the mind is not fixed in a single mode. It moves. It adapts. It changes states. And among those states is one so natural, so powerful, that entire cultures built rituals, sciences, and traditions around it. That state is trance. Trance is not a loss of control. It is not superstition. It is not something only a few people can experience. It is a built-in human ability, a mental switch that alters how attention, emotion, memory, and perception work together. In this audiobook, you will explore how ancient cultures discovered this switch, how modern science explains it, and how it continues to shape human behavior, often without us realizing it. You will learn how trance has been used for healing, learning, endurance, creativity, and connection. You will also learn how it can be misused and how awareness restores choice. This is not a guide to escaping reality. It is an invitation to understand the mind that experiences it. As you listen, allow your attention to settle. There is nothing you need to do. Nothing you need to believe. Just listen. The switch is already there. Chapter 1. How cultures and sciences activate altered states for purpose and power. There is a mental switch humans have learned to flip. It does not require magic, substances, or special gifts. It does not belong to one religion, one culture, or one era. It is a natural function of the human brain, a shift in awareness that changes how attention, emotion, memory, and perception work together. This switch is called trance. For most of human history, trance was not treated as something strange or mystical. It was understood as a state, a useful one. A way to heal the body, strengthen endurance, focus the mind, transmit tradition, and transform experience. Cultures around the world discovered it independently, named it differently, and used it for specific purposes. Only recently did modern society begin to misunderstand trance, confusing it with loss of control, fantasy, or manipulation. In reality, trance is not about losing awareness. It is about narrowing and deepening it. At its core, trance is a shift in how the brain allocates attention. Under normal waking conditions, attention is scattered. We monitor our surroundings, our thoughts, our emotions, and our sense of self all at once. In trance, this balance changes. Awareness becomes focused, absorbed, and selectively tuned. Certain inputs grow louder. Others fade into the background. This is why trance feels different, but not unconscious. You have already experienced it. When you drive a familiar route and arrive without remembering each turn. When you become absorbed in a book and lose track of time. When an athlete enters the zone. When a musician disappears into rhythm. These are not accidents. They are mild trance states, activated naturally by repetition, focus, and emotional engagement. Cultures learn to amplify this process. Across continents and centuries, humans discovered that rhythm was one of the fastest ways to activate the trance switch. Drumming, chanting, dancing, and repetitive movements synchronize attention and stabilize awareness. The mind stops jumping. The body locks into pattern. Thought quiets. In many indigenous traditions, rhythmic trance was used for healing and guidance. The steady beat helped participants enter a focused state where pain perception shifted, emotions regulated, and symbolic insight emerged. The trance itself was not the goal, the outcome was. Religious traditions refined this further. In Sufi whirling, Buddhist meditation, Gregorian chant, and contemplative prayer, trance became a pathway to devotion, discipline, and inner clarity. The methods varied, but the mechanics were consistent: repetition, focus, emotional meaning, and sustained attention. Science would later recognize these patterns. Neuroscience shows that during trance-like states, brain activity changes. Certain networks responsible for self-criticism and time awareness quiet down. Others associated with imagery, emotion, and pattern recognition become more active. Brain waves often shift toward alpha and theta ranges, states associated with learning, memory integration, and calm focus. This explains why trance has been so effective for learning. When attention is absorbed and emotional resistance is low, the brain becomes more receptive. Information is encoded more deeply. Habits are easier to reshape. This is why storytelling, ritual, and guided imagery have always been powerful teaching tools. Modern psychology rediscovered this through hypnosis. Despite its dramatic portrayal in popular culture, hypnosis is simply a structured trance. It relies on focused attention, expectation, and suggestion. In therapeutic settings, it has been used to manage pain, reduce anxiety, address trauma, and support behavior change. The key point is this: hypnosis does not override the will. It works with the brain's natural trance capacity. The same applies to endurance and performance. Soldiers, monks, athletes, and long-distance runners have long used trance-like focus to push beyond ordinary limits. By narrowing attention and dissociating from discomfort, the brain reduces the emotional weight of fatigue. The body continues, even when the mind might otherwise stop. Again, trance is not escapism, it is regulation. But trance is not always used consciously. Modern life is filled with unintentional trance triggers. Scrolling social media, binge-watching content, repetitive advertising, immersive gaming, all rely on the same mechanisms of attention capture and absorption. The brain enters trance not because it wants to, but because it is designed to. This is where awareness becomes critical. Trance itself is neutral. It amplifies whatever is fed into it. Used intentionally, it can heal, teach, and empower. Used unconsciously, it can distract, manipulate, and drain. Cultures understood this balance. Traditional societies surrounded trance with structure, rituals, guides, and boundaries. There were clear beginnings and endings, clear purposes, clear roles. Trance was entered deliberately and exited intentionally. Modern society often removes the structure but keeps the stimulus. This is why understanding trance matters now more than ever. To recognize when the switch is being flipped. To notice when attention narrows, time fades, and awareness shifts. And to choose, consciously, how that state is used. The human switch has not disappeared. It has not weakened. If anything, it has become easier to activate in a world saturated with rhythm, repetition, and emotional cues. The question is not whether you enter trance. The question is who is guiding it, and for what purpose. When you understand trance, you reclaim a fundamental human ability, the power to focus deeply, regulate emotion, reshape habits, and move through the world with intention rather than impulse. Trance is not a mystery to fear. It is a tool to understand. And once recognized, the switch no longer controls you. You control the switch. Chapter 2. Trance Across Cultures, Ritual, Rhythm, and Meaning. How societies learned to flip the switch. Long before laboratories, textbooks, or brain scans, human societies discovered something remarkable. They discovered that the mind could be guided. Across continents that never met, cultures developed practices that altered awareness in predictable ways. They did not call it neuroscience. They called it ritual, prayer, ceremony, or journey. But beneath the names was the same realization: attention can be shaped, and when it is, human experience changes. Trance did not emerge as entertainment. It emerged as function. In ancient and indigenous cultures, trance was woven into survival itself. It guided healing, decision-making, emotional regulation, and social cohesion. It was not reserved for elites. It was embedded in communal life. One of the earliest and most universal methods was rhythm. Drumming, clapping, stamping, and chanting appear in nearly every early culture. The reason is simple: rhythm stabilizes attention. A steady beat reduces mental noise and synchronizes body and mind. As the rhythm continues, awareness narrows. Time perception shifts. The trance switch begins to flip. In many traditions, this rhythmic immersion lasted for hours. Dancers moved until thought dissolved into motion. Chanting repeated until language turned into vibration. The goal was not exhaustion, it was absorption. Movement amplified the effect. Dance is not random motion. Repetitive, patterned movement entrains the nervous system. It grounds attention in the body while freeing the mind from constant analysis. This is why trance dances appear in African, Native American, Australian Aboriginal, and Central Asian cultures. The body becomes the anchor. The mind follows. Other cultures used fasting and sensory alteration. By reducing food intake, limiting sleep, or changing environmental stimuli, societies learned to shift awareness inward. These methods were never casual. They were structured, guided, and purposeful. Elders knew when to begin, when to stop, and how to interpret what emerged. From these practices arose the figure of the shaman. Shamans were not performers. They were trained specialists in navigating altered states. Through trance, they sought insight, diagnosis, and symbolic meaning. The shaman's journey, often described as travel to other realms, was, in practical terms, a deep trance state rich in imagery and intuition. What mattered was not whether the journey was literal or symbolic. What mattered was its effect. People healed. Conflicts resolved. Fears softened. Meaning emerged. Some cultures experienced trance as possession. In these traditions, the self temporarily stepped aside, allowing another identity, ancestor, spirit, or deity, to speak. From the outside, this looked dramatic. From within the culture, it was understood and controlled. Possession trance followed strict rules. Not everyone could enter it. Not every message was accepted. The community acted as a stabilizing force. Religion refined trance into devotion and discipline. In Islamic Sufism, rhythmic chanting and whirling were used to dissolve ego and deepen connection. In Buddhism, meditation cultivated focused awareness and insight through stillness rather than movement. Christian mystics entered contemplative trance through prayer, repetition, and silence. Different methods. Same switch. Each tradition discovered that repetition, meaning, and intention mattered more than technique. The brain responds not just to rhythm, but to purpose. When a practice carries emotional and symbolic weight, trance deepens naturally. This is where belief plays a critical role. Belief does not mean blind faith. It means expectation shaped by culture. When participants trust the ritual, the mind relaxes resistance. Attention flows inward. Trance strengthens. This is not weakness, it is cooperation between mind and meaning. Equally important was community. Trance in traditional societies was rarely solitary. It was shared. Drums synchronized groups. Chants unified voices. Movements aligned bodies. This collective rhythm created what modern science would call neural entrainment, shared patterns of attention and emotion. The result was trust. Shared trance dissolved social barriers. Individuals felt part of something larger than themselves. This strengthened group identity and cooperation. In times of stress, fear, or uncertainty, shared trance stabilized communities. But cultures also understood the risks. Trance is powerful. Entered without guidance, it can overwhelm or disorient. That is why societies built safeguards. There were clear leaders, clear boundaries, clear endings. Rituals opened trance and closed it. Symbols grounded the experience. Stories helped interpret it. Participants were never left alone in altered states. In this way, trance was contained. Modern society often ignores this wisdom. We trigger trance without structure, through screens, noise, repetition, and emotional stimulation, without rituals to exit or integrate. Ancient cultures did the opposite: fewer triggers, more guidance. This difference matters. The cultural use of trance shows that altered states were never about escape. They were about integration, bringing insight back into daily life. Across history, the pattern repeats. Different languages, different beliefs, different rituals, same mental switch. The human brain has always been capable of shifting awareness. Cultures did not invent trance. They discovered how to work with it responsibly. And that discovery may be one of humanity's oldest technologies. Key insight revisited. Different cultures used different methods, but they all discovered the same mental switch and used it intentionally, with structure, meaning, and care. Chapter 3. The Science of Altered States. What neuroscience, psychology, and medicine reveal. For much of modern history, trance was treated with suspicion. If something could not be measured, it was dismissed. If it sounded mystical, it was labeled unscientific. Yet as neuroscience, psychology, and medicine advanced, something unexpected happened. Science did not erase trance. It found it. Modern research revealed that altered states of awareness are not anomalies or illusions. They are measurable, repeatable brain states, each with distinct patterns of activity, function, and benefit. What ancient cultures described symbolically, science began to describe neurologically. One of the clearest markers of trance appears in brain waves. The brain operates through electrical rhythms. These rhythms change depending on attention, emotion, and cognitive demand. In everyday alert thinking, beta waves dominate. They are fast, analytical, and often noisy. As attention narrows and the mind settles, brain activity shifts. Alpha waves emerge during relaxed focus, calm alertness without tension. This state is common in meditation, light hypnosis, and creative thought. Alpha reduces mental interference, making it easier to absorb information and regulate emotion. Deeper trance often involves theta waves. Theta is associated with imagery, intuition, emotional processing, and memory integration. It appears during deep meditation, hypnosis, and moments just before sleep. In theta, the brain becomes highly receptive, less critical, more associative. At the highest levels of integration, gamma waves appear. Gamma is linked to peak performance, insight, and moments of unity between perception and action. Advanced meditators, elite athletes, and master musicians often show bursts of gamma activity during deep focus. These shifts are not signs of unconsciousness. They are signs of reorganization. This distinction leads to an important clarification. Focused attention is not dissociation. In trance, attention narrows deliberately. The mind becomes absorbed, not fragmented. Dissociation, by contrast, is a defensive response. Attention breaks apart under stress or trauma. Healthy trance increases coherence. Unhealthy dissociation reduces it. Modern psychology emphasizes this difference. When trance is guided, intentional, and grounded, it strengthens self-regulation. When it is forced or uncontrolled, it can destabilize. This explains why cultural safeguards and modern therapeutic frameworks matter so much. Nowhere is this clearer than in hypnosis. Despite stage shows and stereotypes, hypnosis is one of the most studied trance states in psychology. Research shows that hypnotic responsiveness is not about suggestibility or weakness. It is about focused attention, expectation, and imagination working together. Under hypnosis, people are not asleep. They are not controlled. They are intensely attentive. This state allows the brain to temporarily bypass habitual patterns, reducing pain perception, interrupting anxiety loops, and reshaping automatic behaviors. Hypnosis works not because the mind is overridden, but because it is engaged differently. This principle extends into therapy and medicine. Trance-based approaches are now used to treat trauma, phobias, chronic pain, and anxiety. By entering a regulated, altered state, patients can revisit memories without being overwhelmed. The emotional charge softens. The nervous system learns safety. Pain control offers a striking example. Under trance, the brain does not necessarily stop registering pain signals. Instead, it changes how those signals are interpreted. Attention shifts away from distress, reducing suffering even when sensation remains. This is not imagination, it is neural modulation. Trance also plays a role in habit change. Addictions, compulsions, and automatic behaviors operate below conscious awareness. Trance allows therapeutic suggestions to reach those deeper layers where habits live. Again, the mechanism is not coercion, but receptivity. This leads to one of the most misunderstood phenomena in medicine, the placebo effect. For decades, placebo was treated as a nuisance variable, something to control for. Today, it is recognized as evidence of the mind's influence on the body. Expectation, belief, and meaning activate real physiological changes. Placebo is not fake healing. It is context-driven healing. The brain responds to belief by releasing neurotransmitters, altering immune responses, and regulating stress hormones. These effects are strongest when attention is focused and emotional meaning is present. In other words, when trance-like states are engaged. This is not deception. It is neurobiology. Outside the clinic, trance reveals itself in flow states. Athletes describe moments when effort disappears and performance becomes automatic. Artists lose track of time as creation unfolds effortlessly. Surgeons, gamers, musicians, and speakers experience total absorption. Flow is a functional trance. In flow, self-criticism quiets. Distractions fade. Action and awareness merge. The brain optimizes efficiency, coordination, and endurance. This is why people often perform beyond normal limits in these states. Learning accelerates here as well. When the brain is relaxed but focused, memory encoding improves. Emotional resistance drops. Information integrates more deeply. This is why storytelling, immersive practice, and experiential learning are so powerful. Trance does not make the mind weaker. It makes it more adaptable. This adaptability explains endurance. By narrowing attention, the brain reduces the emotional weight of fatigue. The body continues not because limits disappear, but because perception changes. This is how long-distance runners, meditators, and monks sustain effort for extended periods. Across neuroscience, psychology, and medicine, the conclusion is consistent. Trance is not superstition. It is a state of neural organization with specific, measurable effects. Science did not strip trance of its power. It explained it, using different language, but confirming the same truths cultures discovered long ago. The human switch is real. And understanding it gives us a rare advantage, the ability to work with the mind rather than against it. Key insight revisited. Science didn't debunk trance. It confirmed it, explaining what cultures intuited thousands of years ago. Chapter 4. Purpose and Power, Using Trance Intentionally. From ancient wisdom to modern application. Trance has never been the problem. Misunderstanding it has. Across cultures and centuries, trance was treated as a tool, something to be entered deliberately, guided carefully, and exited consciously. It was never meant to replace reality, but to refine how humans engage with it. In modern life, trance is often framed as escape, as zoning out, as losing control. Yet when trance is used intentionally, it does the opposite. It strengthens awareness rather than dissolving it. The difference lies in purpose. When trance has purpose, it becomes a skill. When it does not, it becomes a vulnerability. Ancient traditions understood this intuitively. They used trance to heal, to focus, to endure hardship, and to restore balance. Modern science now confirms those benefits, but without cultural guidance, many people experience trance passively rather than deliberately. Healing is one of the clearest examples. Intentional trance allows the nervous system to downshift from chronic stress. Breath slows. Muscle tension releases. Emotional reactivity softens. In this state, the brain can reorganize responses to pain, anxiety, and trauma. This is not suppression. It is regulation. Creativity emerges from the same mechanism. When analytical thinking relaxes and attention narrows, the mind forms new connections. Ideas surface without force. Artists, writers, inventors, and problem solvers have always relied on trance-like focus, even if they never named it as such. Resilience, too, is shaped here. Under pressure, the untrained mind scatters. The trained mind narrows. Trance allows attention to stay with what matters while filtering out overwhelm. This is why soldiers, first responders, and endurance athletes cultivate controlled, altered states. They are not escaping reality, they are stabilizing themselves within it. Self-regulation sits at the center of all these outcomes. When you can guide attention, you can guide emotion. When you can guide emotion, you can guide behavior. Trance becomes a bridge between intention and action. But power always invites misuse. Throughout history, trance has been exploited as well as respected. Charismatic leaders, propaganda, cults, and mass movements have used rhythmic speech, emotional storytelling, repetition, and symbolic language to capture attention and bypass critical thought. The methods are ancient. The delivery is modern. Today, media and advertising activate trance constantly. Scrolling feeds, autoplay videos, notification loops, and emotionally charged headlines all narrow attention and distort time perception. The mind slips into absorption without consent. This is not accidental. Platforms are designed to hold attention, not awareness. When trance operates unconsciously, influence increases. When trance is recognized, influence weakens. Awareness interrupts automatic absorption. This is why ethical use matters. Ethical trance respects autonomy. It invites participation rather than coercion. It clarifies purpose and allows exit. Manipulative trance obscures intent, removes choice, and discourages reflection. The difference is subtle, but critical. Learning to recognize trance begins with simple signals. Time distortion. Narrowed focus. Reduced awareness of surroundings. Emotional amplification. Repetition. These are not warnings, they are indicators. When you notice them, you regain choice. You can ask, why am I here? What is this state being used for? Developing conscious awareness does not mean avoiding trance. It means entering it on your own terms. Meditation, breath work, focused listening, rhythmic movement, and creative immersion all allow safe, intentional trance. These practices strengthen attention rather than weakening it. They train the mind to shift states without fear. Fear rises when trance feels uncontrollable. Understanding dissolves that fear. The human switch will never disappear because it is fundamental to how the brain works. Attention must narrow for learning to occur. Emotion must focus for meaning to form. Trance is built into perception itself. The question is not whether the switch exists. The question is who holds the hand that flips it. Ancient cultures answered this with ritual and guidance. Modern life demands something different: literacy, awareness, choice. When trance is ignored, it shapes behavior quietly. When it is understood, it becomes one of the most powerful human skills, the ability to direct attention, regulate emotion, and engage the world deliberately. This is the true legacy of trance. Not mysticism, not spectacle, but mastery of the mind's natural rhythms. Key insight revisited. When understood, trance becomes a skill. When ignored, it still operates, often under someone else's influence. You have now traveled through cultures, rituals, science, and modern life. You have seen how trance appears in ancient ceremonies and modern laboratories. How it shapes healing and habit, creativity and endurance. How it can empower or quietly influence, depending on whether it is understood. What remains is not a mystery. It is a responsibility. The human mind will always shift states. Attention will always narrow. Emotion will always amplify meaning. Trance will always occur, whether deliberately or unconsciously. This has never changed. What can change is awareness. When you recognize trance, you regain agency. When you understand it, you gain skill. When you respect it, you reduce fear. Trance is not something to seek constantly, nor something to avoid. It is something to work with. Like fire, it can warm or consume. The difference lies in knowledge and intention. As you return to daily life, you may begin to notice moments of absorption more clearly. Time passing differently. Focus tightening. Emotion deepening. These are not interruptions. They are reminders. The switch is always within reach. And now, it is no longer invisible. Thank you for listening.